The Federal High Court, Ikoyi, has granted bail to the former INEC boss, Professor Maurice Iwu, to the tune of 1 billion naira. Professor Iwu was arraigned on 4 counts of concealment, fraud and money laundering to the tune of 1.2 billion naira. In the charge, the EFCC alleged that Professor Iwu aided the concealment of the above sum between December 2014 and March of 2015. The money is believed to be part of the 23.29 billion naira slush funds allegedly shared by the former Petroleum Minister Desiani Alison Madueke to influence the outcome of the 2015 presidential elections. Professor Iwu, however, pleaded not guilty to the charges, and his lawyer, Ahmed Raji, Senior Advocate Nigeria, asked the courts to grant him bail on the grounds of self-recognizance and, secondly, on liberal terms. The prosecution lawyer, Rotimi Oyedepo, on the other hand, said there was evidence of the possibility of the defendant intimidating or interfering with the witnesses if he was granted bail, and therefore urged the courts to use its discretion not to grant the bail. After listening to both arguments, however, Justice Chuka Obiozo granted the bail while also requesting for 2 sureties and insisting that Mr. Iwu must not communicate with any of the witnesses. Now, the police in Lagos have arrested 2 Chinese nationals for illegally operating an e-waste factory in the residential area of Ikeja, the state capital. The illegal electronic waste factory, which is owned and operated by Ling Piehao and Li Roqiang, assembles used electronic panels and packages them for exports to China, Vietnam, and Dubai. Commander in charge of the area, Soji Akinbayo, said they were hinted by residents of the community about the illegal activities within the compound. The Controller General of Immigration, Mohammed Babandide, has, however, directed that the case should be duly investigated by the ACJ in charge of the Zone A, the Controller in Lagos. The Lagos Environment Protection Agency, LASEPA, and the Safety Commission of Lagos State have sealed up the illegal factory. Now, a panel set up by the police to investigate the killing of 3 officers and a civilian while on investigative duties on Tuesday in Taraba State has visited the scene of the incident. According to the force spokesperson, DCP Frank Mba, the officers had gone to arrest one Alhaji Hamisu, who was indicted in a series of high-profile kidnap incidents. Mr. Mba stated that the police operatives led by ASP Felix Adolije of the Intelligence Response Team IRT reportedly came under sudden attack and serious shooting by soldiers of the Nigerian Army along Ibi Jalingo Road as they were taking the arrested suspect Alhaji Hamisu to the command headquarters in Jalingo. But in reaction, the army claimed that the incident was a mistake as troops of the 93 Battalion Takum mistook them for kidnappers and therefore engaged them in a gun battle. Immediately after the incident, the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, ordered the AIG medicals to proceed to Jalingo to ensure concerted efforts in the treatment of the injured police officers, adding that the remains of the deceased should be deposited in the mortuary. Now, data feeds coming through all in one place simultaneously on all of our social media platforms. You can be a part of the show. Tweet at me at KAY Alayande using the hashtag State of the Nation to be part of this conversation. It's prime time in Lagos, and this is State of the Nation. Welcome again. I'm Kayode Alayande, and this is State of the Nation. We invite you to be a part of the show. Use the hashtag State of the Nation. Tweet also at me at KAY Alayande, and your thoughts are appreciated on the subjects that we are discussing tonight. So moving on to the first of those subjects, on Tuesday, some soldiers attached to the 93 Battalion, Takum, Taraba State, shot to death 3 police operatives of the intelligence response team from the police headquarters on a covert operation. The police officers, 1 inspector, 2 sergeants, and a civilian who also died in the incident, came under attack while taking a kidnapped kingpin, Alhaji Hamisu, to the command headquarters in Jalingo. But according to the police, its officers were murdered despite providing sufficient proof that they were police personnel on legitimate duty. In its response, the Nigerian army says its officers killed the officers in error, believing that they were kidnappers. However, the kidnapped kingpin Alhaji Hamisu, who was said to have been adequately restrained by a handcuff, is now on the run. The president has ordered an investigation into the matter. Now, that situation has thrown up quite a lot of questions, and that's what we're about to deal with tonight. We have in the studio with me a legal practitioner, a friend of our house, Mr. Jiti Ogunye. Thank you very much for being part of the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so, I mean, controversy has ensued after this issue happened on Tuesday, and you have been following the story. What do you think of the situation and how it's been handled so far?
Well, first and foremost, let's come straight with the families of those policemen who are lost so needlessly and so unwarrantedly, if you ask me, in that incident. And these officers, you know, of course, have names. And they are Inspector Mark Edaili, Sergeant Usman Dansumi, and Sergeant Dahiru Musa. And of course, there are other 3 civilians that have since died since the incident. 1 died immediately and 2 later. And of course, the Nigerian Army, through its spokesperson, have come out to give his own side of the story, while the police were also explaining what happened, raising many posters and questions, which are very troubling, and which the Nigerian Army will have to answer one way or the other. It's good that at the highest level, and I'm talking about the National Defense and Security Council, the President had ordered an investigation, and that we're now going to have the 2 forces, so to speak, contributing to the investigation process. Let me say that this incident ought not to happen. It shouldn't have happened. It's true that Nigeria has been fighting a war for about 10 years now, and many Nigerians do not want to recognize that fact. As unfortunate as the Nigerian Civil War was, it was a 3-year war between 1967 and 1970. And so after that war, you know, the country then embarked on the task of rebuilding, reconstruction, and, you know, ensuring that frayed knives were cooled. But we've been fighting this war in the Northeast now with seeming extension to the Northwest, which the Nigerian military authorities and the Nigerian government have been labeling banditry, thereby foreclosing the possibility that we're having a Western front for Boko Haram or ISWAP. That's good. But we've been fighting that war for 10 years now. And so Nigeria is in a war situation. And in war, atrocities do occur against civilian population, against fellow soldiers, against those who are even who are doing the combat. And so that's why we have war crimes. That's why we have conventions that regulate conduct and all that. We know that even before the advent of that Boko Haram crisis, which had caused the situation in the Northeast, and understandably we put those who are fighting on edge and all that, the relationship between the police and the military had not been an easy one. In 2004, we had an incident in Lagos here where soldiers marched on the police barrack in Ojuelegba and, you know, destroyed the place. And, of course, after that, there was a panel that was set up, but the report of the panel never saw the light of the day. There was a shooting incident in Badagry where a policeman who, you know, went on a peace mission to a military barrack, you know, to appease the soldiers who had lost one of their own in an incident, you know, had fire opened on them, and they were killed. And nothing happened thereafter. We've had an incident in Niger State recently, in 2017, which more or less was like an ambush against policemen. So things like that had been occurring in Nigeria. And I think that for too long, the police have been an underdog, really. And that's also because of our tragic history, where the military had seized over power, and they were just merely tolerating the police, undermining the police even. And so there has been a carryover of that frosty relationship to the civilian era. And anytime this crisis occurred, the police always had their back to the wall, and, you know, they are the underdog.
What's different in this case?
And in this case, what has happened, in my mind, is that there was a covert operation by the police. And there was a notorious kingpin of a kidnap kingpin called Alhaji Amisu, you know, who was arrested and had been handcuffed, restrained. The police are saying that it was a legitimate operation and that the Taraba Police Command was in the know, the area command was in the know, the divisional police command was in the know, contrary to what the soldiers are claiming. Who's, you know, because the claim of the soldiers was that, you know, they didn't identify themselves and that they opened fire on the police first, and there was a gunfight that ensued and they died. What I think is important is that moving forward, this kind of thing shouldn't happen anymore in the country. If policemen have a duty to discharge, even in a war situation, there should be no reason they shouldn't discharge that duty. Okay? And things like this, and it aggravates our fears all over the country. And what's the aggravation here? People will look at this incident and say, if policemen could be killed like this, what will happen to civilians? And doesn't even suggest that there's a problem in fighting the Boko Haram war, in fighting insurgency, in fighting banditry and kidnapping in the country. Are there possibilities? And there's no conspiracy to it. Are there possibility that there could be complicity amongst our security forces, you know, as far as, you know, the prevalence of kidnapping and banditry is concerned?
Let's look at the video, the video that surfaced, for instance. Let's even assume that the army, actually, the soldiers didn't know that these were police officers. The way and manner civilians came onto the scene and then handled the remains of these gentlemen, I mean, it's quite worrying. It's quite worrying. Now, how do you see that this situation is going to be handled?
Well, you know, for the lives that have been lost, justice must be served, no matter whose yours is God. And I'm saying this quite, you know, with all sense of responsibility. For the military, time and again, we've seen military personnel being court-martialed, even at the highest level. We had one incident now from Sokoto where there was a 400 million naira, you know, movement, you know, and so that's still under investigation now and all that. And so the military shouldn't have any restraint in getting to the root of the matter, and if their officers are to blame, in meting out appropriate sanctions. Because if that is not done, even the impetus, the enthusiasm to do anti-kidnapping operation on the part of the IRT and the entire police force at large will wane considerably, and Nigerians will be at the receiving end.